If I had known that the third morning of that trip would end with me running through the Appalachian woods like a man chased by his own shadow, I would have turned back on day one. But I didn't know. I only knew that nothing in my life ever scared me the way that night did. And what I found inside that abandoned tent still makes my chest tighten every time I think about it. I've been obsessed with solo hiking for years. Not the Instagram kind. No staged photos. No forced epiphanies. No finding myself. For me, it's the quiet. The rhythm. The sense that the world finally stops talking over you. The Appalachians were perfect for that. Miles of trail, dense forest, and no one asking why you prefer silence over conversation. The first 2 days were exactly what I wanted. Steady elevation, predictable weather, dry ground under my boots. Nothing unusual, nothing threatening, nothing that hinted at how violently everything would shift on day 3. That morning, the air felt heavier, like the woods were bracing for rain, though the sky was clean. I followed the trail until noon, then veered a little off route in search of a better spot for lunch. That's when I saw it. A tent. A fully pitched, clean, perfectly intact tent standing alone in a small clearing. No gear outside. No footprints. No signs of struggle or scavengers. Just a tent, positioned with the kind of precision only someone experienced would bother with. I called out once, twice. Nothing. I waited, listening, expecting a rustle or a cough or even a branch snapping in response. Silence. For a second, I considered walking on, but the clearing was too ideal to pass up. Flat ground, close to water, sheltered from the wind. If the tent's owner had gone deeper into the mountains, they'd return eventually. People leave gear unattended all the time. Nothing strange about it. So I pitched my own tent about 10 meters away, built a small fire, cooked dinner, and watched the sun go down behind the ridge. The sky slowly bled into blue, then charcoal, then nothing. It felt peaceful until it didn't. Midnight came and went. My fire died down to red coals. I must have fallen asleep at some point, because the next thing I remember is waking up to a sound so faint, I wasn't sure if I dreamed it. A shuffle, a brush of fabric, then footsteps. Careful, slow, unsteady, circling my tent, as if whoever it was didn't want to be noticed. My pulse snapped awake before the rest of me did. I held my breath. The steps stopped. Then a low whisper drifted through the nylon. Soft, shaky. Words I couldn't understand. My throat tightened. I grabbed my flashlight, flicked it on, and the world went silent. Completely silent. Like someone had snatched the sound out of the air. I forced myself to think logically. Maybe the owner of the stranger's tent had returned and didn't want to startle me. Or maybe it was some hiker passing by. That explanation felt thin, but it was the only one I had. So I unzipped my tent and stepped out into the cold air. The clearing was still. My light swept over the grass, over the trees, over my gear, and finally landed on the other tent. I called out. No answer. I walked closer, the flashlight beam trembling just slightly, just enough for me to notice it and hate it. I called again, louder this time. Nothing. The tent looked exactly as it had during the day, untouched. No footprints, no movement, no sign of its owner returning. The silence pressed in harder, and for a second, I almost turned back. But something was wrong. Wrong enough that walking away felt worse than checking. I crouched, took a breath, and lifted the flap. The smell hit first. Not rot, not smoke, but something like burnt metal and cold air. In the center of the tent floor was a black, circular stain, perfectly round, as if something had burned there in a single instant, too fast to scorch the walls. The fabric around it wasn't melted, just stained, like soot or ash or something I didn't want to name. Then I saw the phone. It lay near the stain, screen up, still showing 1 bar of battery. It wasn't locked. The display was frozen on a paused video thumbnail. No title, no timestamp. Just a still frame of the tent from the outside. My chest tightened again, this time sharper. Someone left their phone. Someone left this behind. And someone hadn't come back for either. Every instinct I had told me to put the flap down and forget I ever saw it. But curiosity is a dangerous thing, and sometimes it feels stronger than fear. I picked up the phone. My thumb hovered over the play button. For 2 long seconds, I argued with myself. Then I pressed it. When the video started playing, the first thing that hit me was how still everything looked. The phone's camera had been set somewhere on the ground outside the tent, aimed straight at it, unmoving. No commentary, no rustling, no breathing behind the microphone, just hours of silent footage. The timestamp showed nothing helpful. It was as if whoever recorded it didn't care about details, or didn't expect to be the one watching it later. For several minutes, the screen showed only darkness, faint outlines of the tent, the pale line of the clearing behind it. I kept waiting for something, anything, to happen. My thumb hovered over the fast-forward bar as unease crawled up my back. Then I gave in and dragged the timeline forward. The image skipped ahead by hours. Still nothing. I frowned, dragged further, and then, at 3:17 a.m., the frame twitched. A glitch, like a brief tremor in the world, caught on camera. I froze. My breath suddenly felt too loud in the quiet of the empty tent. I rewound a few seconds and watched again. The same twitch, the same distortion. Only this time, when the frame stabilized, there was something new in it, something that hadn't been there before. A silhouette, tall, motionless, standing just far enough away that its shape blurred into the darkness, but close enough that my brain instantly rejected the idea of it being human. The proportions were wrong. Too tall. The arms hung lower than they should, almost brushing the knees. The head was elongated, narrow, tilted slightly as though listening to something I couldn't hear. Then it moved. Not a step, not a turn, just a subtle lean forward, like it had become aware of the camera. A soft sound drifted through the phone's speaker. A whisper, weak, shaky, almost identical to what I'd heard circling my tent earlier that night. My pulse hammered against my ribs as I realized the similarity wasn't a coincidence. I watched, frozen. The whispering continued, low and rhythmic, like someone repeating a phrase over and over. Then, underneath it, came a faint hum. At first, it sounded like wind pushing against a microphone, but it grew deeper, more resonant, like the ground itself was vibrating. I tightened my grip on the phone. The figure stepped forward. Its movements were wrong, too smooth, too deliberate, as if its joints bent a little too far or in the wrong direction. The whisper sharpened. The hum grew. My breath felt trapped in my chest, as though the sound was pressing it out of me. The silhouette stopped in front of the tent, towering above it. And then the light came. A column, no, an eruption of blinding white burst out from inside the tent in the video. So bright, it washed out the entire screen. Instinctively, I jerked back, the phone slipping from my hand and hitting the ground. For a second, I thought I'd gone blind. Even after I blinked several times, a pale afterimage hung stubbornly in my vision. I reached down with shaking fingers, grabbed the phone, and looked at the screen. The video had stopped. The last frame was a chaotic blur. The moment the camera fell over before the recording cut out completely. My mouth felt dry. I swallowed hard and let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. That wasn't the worst part. Still trembling, I opened the phone's gallery, needing to see if anything else had been recorded. Maybe the previous owner had tried to document whatever happened next. Maybe they escaped. Maybe they didn't. The thought made my stomach twist. There it was, another video. Its thumbnail was black. No image, no indication of length, just a dark square sitting quietly beneath the one I just watched. My thumb drifted toward it almost automatically, but then something in my mind snapped back to the tent floor. The soot. The perfect circular stain burned into the fabric. The way the walls hadn't been touched, only the exact spot where something had happened fast, violently, impossibly. A cold realization ran up my spine. The phone had been inside the tent, not outside, not at the recording position the first video showed. Someone, not something, had brought it back into the tent after recording. Someone had started that second video from inside, and whatever happened next created that scorched stain. My thumb froze inches above the screen. Every instinct I had screamed not to open it. Not here. Not in the same exact spot where the owner of this phone had vanished. The clearing felt suddenly smaller, as though the darkness around me had leaned closer while I wasn't looking. No, I whispered to myself, voice cracking. I locked the phone, placed it carefully back where I'd found it, right by the burn mark, then stepped out of the tent as fast and as quietly as I could. The cold air hit me like a slap, but I didn't stop. I didn't look around. I didn't listen. I just moved. I tore down my own tent in minutes, stuffed everything into my pack with hands that refused to stay steady, and forced myself back onto the trail. There was nothing I could do for whoever had camped there. Nothing I wanted to know. Nothing I was willing to risk. Whatever that second video showed, I wasn't going to be the one to find out. Let the professionals deal with it. I just needed to get out of those woods while I still could.